Story 1. The point of critique is to learn to make better art. Basically, if criticism is just criticizing without considering why something does or does not work, it is not criticism, only complaining. Story 2. Do not take criticism from someone you would not take advice from. Story 3. Never put anything in writing you wouldn't want the world to know. When I was in middle school, I wrote an embarrassing but very innocent letter to a boy I had a crush on that got passed around the school. I was very upset, and my mom said the above. I don't remember her offering any comfort or telling me that the letter would soon be forgotten, which it was. My mom could be very matter-of-fact about things, but still very loving. I know my sister will never forget what my mom said when they were at the hospital viewing my sister's husband's body. He died unexpectedly an hour before of a heart attack. He was 36. My mom was a registered nurse and sometimes unemotional about death. So she was holding my sister and telling her she was sorry and that this was all so unfair. Then said, "Come on, let's get going. He's not going to get any less dead." My sister and I have a morbid sense of humor. So even now, 15 years later, I'll say to my sister, "Hey, did we ever get less dead?" And she'll say, "Nope." And we have a little laugh. Story 4. Treat everyone on the road like they are inexperienced. My father said when I passed my driving test, "It has served me well. I am very aware of my surroundings, potential hazards, and always expect the unexpected." Story 5. She wouldn't let someone else drag her spirit down like that, so don't you. My 7th grade English and homeroom teacher. I was at a very rough spot in my life. I was actually suicidal. He pulled me aside after class one day and told me I reminded him of Barbra Streisand, that she was funny, talented, beautiful, and had to grow into herself. But she never let anyone dull her shine. He was about to intervene when I was pulled from class and had to go to guidance because someone told them I was suicidal and had a plan. He had watched me slowly start turning inward and stop being the sparkly firebrand he was used to. I will never forget it. It's been nearly 40 years. Teachers are unsung heroes. Story 6. The most important clause of a contract is how to exit it. Story 7. Before you buy something, decide if it is worth the time it took to earn its cost. Story 8. If you pass away, your job will be posted before your obituary. Story 9. Waiting tables at a restaurant. I told a customer, "Enjoy your meal." And they said, "You too. I just want them to know that I will never forget." Story 10. I told my mom that I never felt like she liked me or was proud of me because I only ever heard her praise my sister and openly wished for me to be more like her. I was sobbing on the floor in front of her, and she just looked annoyed and said, "I guess I'm proud of you." She said it in a way that showed she was just trying to move on from the situation and was annoyed with me. I think about that moment a lot when she complains that we are not close. Since that moment, which happened 12 years ago, she has told me twice that she is proud of me, but I instantly hear, "I guess I'm proud of you," and cannot believe her. Story 11. My now 12-year-old son was born a month premature and had to spend some time in an oxygen incubator in the neonatal care unit. After the nurses took him out of the delivery room, my wife and I went up to the room to see him. We were both looking at our new son when my wife looked up at me and said, "I have never loved you more than I love you right now." I asked her why, and she said, "Because of the way you are looking at our son, because of how much you love him." Story 12. Love you too, son. My father's last words to me before I went to bed. He had passed when I woke up the next morning. Story 13. Get up and get him. All of my children have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They were overwhelming and exhausting. I was sitting in the lobby with my youngest while his older sisters were in a therapy session. He was about 3 years old and kept running into the receptionist's area. I kept calling him back, but he giggled and was reluctant to come. Of course he was a toddler having fun. The therapist came out, watched the scene for a moment, and then came to me with that phrase. I was so incredibly embarrassed to have my parenting criticized publicly like that. However, after that, I no longer called to my children to stop doing whatever they were not supposed to do. I got up and got them. Parenting became a lot easier when I took immediate action. My children learned that I meant what I said, and that began to smooth out many things in our interactions. I am grateful for the embarrassment. Story 14. Don't let your ego get in the way of your comfort. My squad leader said this to me when I was a young platoon leader and did not want to wear cold weather gear. Story 15. When I was in middle school, I was in my friend's room, and we were getting ready to go somewhere. She said, "Your backside looks good in those jeans." That's it, no deeper meaning. I remember nothing else. I don't know why this random memory from 40 years ago stands out. I guess no one had ever told me that before. Story 16. The graveyard is full of people who had the right of way. Never miss a good opportunity to stay silent. My grandpa. Story 17. I can't promise you it will get better, but I can promise you it will get different. From my mom after a personal tragedy. She was right. Story 18. My nephew told my sister and me that we would not understand something because we were from the 1000s, not from the 1900s. So anyway, he was launched into low Earth orbit. Story 19. Every adult in your life has failed you. My therapist at the time. Story 20. The first person to break the glass ceiling faces the most challenges. Story 21. When I was in the Army, I was in a tryout for a reconnaissance detachment within my unit. We were at the tail end of a long formation run and had just come to a long and steep hill. One of the leaders of the detachment, who had advocated for me and mentored me from my first day at the unit, was conducting the run. He turned and looked directly at me while he yelled, "Do not let this hill mess with your mind." While it was not readily apparent to the others, he later told me he was yelling directly at me because he knew I was still recovering from a knee injury and had been struggling through the tryout. His words hit just right, and I made it through the rest of the ordeal. That was almost 20 years ago, but I can see his face and hear his voice whenever I am close to letting the hill mess with my mind. Story 22. So many good ones. But the perfect is the enemy of the good, is something I wish I had heard earlier. Doing something well is good, but perfectionism is a problem. Story 23. There was a woman streamer who was being harassed during an online game for being a woman. She said something along the lines of, "Shut your face or I will upset your father and give him the child he always wanted. I have played video games my whole life and I have never been so impressed." It was a powerful response that only someone who understands being a woman could deliver. I was so impressed that it has stayed with me. Story 24. Recovery is not linear. My therapist is helping me through some serious trauma. Story 25. You cannot help people who do not want to be helped. I found out later this applies to more than 99% of the population. Story 26. You are a terrible mother and your children hate you. My mother was the woman who thought being able to wield a belt while holding a beer was a life skill. Fast forward 20 years and my children and I are close. My siblings and any of the grandchildren have no contact with her whatsoever. Story 27. Your character is strong and strong people aren't scared of anything. Said to me by a stoner when I confessed I was afraid of an audition coming up. It really helped me reframe it in my mind and is something I repeat whenever I need a confidence boost. Story 28. In 10th grade drama class, we had a small skit involving getting hit by a car. I took it upon myself to make a cardboard car and paint it for the next day's performance. I was met with "Don't you have a life?" by the popular girl, and my spirit was crushed immediately. 20 years later, I am only now feeling comfortable enough to share, if not just have creative endeavors. Story 29. People do not like you because you are too sensitive. My mother, who now cannot fathom being low contact. Story 30. When I was young, your sisters are so pretty. I bet you are smart. Thanks, strange lady, you could have said nothing. Story 31. Is it that you do not like your work? Or is it that you do not like working? This was an amazing piece of advice when I was deciding whether to change careers. It points out that there are two categories of issues with jobs, and it is very important to distinguish between them before leaving. Some challenges come with the territory of having a full-time job, and wanting to move because of those challenges will likely end poorly. I always think of this when I have a rough day at work. Is it my specific office that I do not like? Or do I just not like working? Story 32. Never compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. Story 33. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Story 34. Don't take a no from someone who doesn't have the authority to say yes. Mom, not the first, but who said it to me. Dollar cost averaging is your friend. An old boss convinced me to max out on the company share program instead of buying a car right away. Story 35. You are going to ruin your life, said my lovely, deeply Southern grandmother when I told her I was getting married to an African-American man. The joke is on her because we celebrated our 7th anniversary this year. We have been together for 12 years in total, and I can guarantee we have been happier than she ever was in her more than 60-year marriage to my grandfather. Story 36. When driving, always be predictable. Also, expect everyone else driving around you to be unpredictable. It is the #1 rule of driving I have passed on to my children. Story 37. I would rather be married to you for 5 seconds than to someone else for 5 centuries. My wife said that. Yes, I cried in her arms when she said it. Story 38. No 17-year-old boy loves you, but he will spend all night trying to convince you he does. My dad explained this to me when I had a curfew on prom night, while my friends were allowed to stay out all night. Story 39. My mother was crying in my lap when I was 14 years old. Story 40. I have never regretted being kind to someone, but I have definitely regretted being unkind. Story 41. Only speak if you can improve the silence. That quote really helped me listen before saying something impulsive. Story 42. You're always going to disappoint someone. Just make sure it's not yourself. Thank you to a colleague who said this in a fleeting moment after I asked for advice on something mundane. Story 43. My mother called me a derogatory name. I have not spoken to her in approximately 17 years. Story 44. I really do not care about your day. I got that from my ex-wife when I came home after a difficult day and tried to tell her about it. Story 45. It should have been you who died, not my son. This was said to me by my ex-stepmother when I was around 11 years old. I know it sounds like a movie quote, but it really happened. My stepbrother was hit by a car while skateboarding. I was not even in the same area as him. She always hated me, and a couple of years after he died, she said this to me out of the blue. Story 46. I went to sit down at lunch and was told, "Why do you sit with us? Nobody here likes you." This was during my junior year, and my mom had just left my dad. I ended up eating lunch with the teaching assistant in the classroom for the rest of the year on those days with block scheduling. Story 47. A bad workout is better than not exercising at all. It definitely helps me to exercise even when I am not motivated, which is most of the time. Story 48. You do not get to choose what other people label you. Your actions show your character. Story 49. I said something in junior high that apparently stuck around with my classmates until I forgot it. Everyone is special until they are told otherwise. It's possible I was referring to something. This was over 20 years ago. I just remember hearing it in high school and thinking it sounded familiar until I found out my friend said that I had said it. Story 50. You are never going to have the body for dance. I am not sure why you are still trying. My ballet teacher, who was of advanced age, to me, age 14 at the time, loudly, in front of 30 of my peers, when I could not suck in my stomach enough for her liking during bar. I had been her student for half a decade and dancing for about 11 years in total. I had idolized her when I was younger. This was not the first time she had said or done something like this. I was not the only student she had lashed out at because of stress, but I cannot remember anyone else getting shamed for their pubescent body in front of a crowd. Story 51. You would be beautiful if you lost weight. My mother said this when I was in high school, and I was not even that overweight. She claims she never said that. Story 52. Anyone can do it right the first time. It takes someone with experience to mess it up but still make it work. Story 53. No one is interested in what you have to say. My mom told me when I was about 6. She was trying to keep me safe because I would walk up to and chat with anyone. Instead, it became a mantra in my head that kept me from so much. Story 54. One of my grandmothers died when I was 3. The last words she told me were, "I love you." They have been in my mind ever since. Story 55. I think it is just all in your head. I was just diagnosed with epilepsy. I have suffered blackout migraines since I was a child. My parents never took me to a hospital until I had a seizure at 16. When I finally got diagnosed at 21, this is what she told me. Story 56. You do not have to light yourself on fire to keep others warm. This is a lesson I wish I had learned 10 years earlier. Story 57. Your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part, my dad said to me when I was a teenager. At the time, it sounded like shade, mostly because it was, but it is something I think about a lot at work when someone tries to impose an avoidable emergency on me. It gives me permission to say no. Story 58. Can I see your underwear? My cousin was around 12 and I was 9. It happened again later on. My only options were to show you what an abuser is really like and beat you or kick you out, my birth father said when I finally had enough of him and called him out during one of his episodes. This happened over my mom and me deciding what gumbo we wanted. And he misheard the situation upstairs in the bathroom. I love you and I'm going to marry you, my wife said after 6 months of dating. Well, she did. We celebrate 6 years in October. Story 59. Hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. That has been a motivation for me to get up and try my best. Story 60. From each according to their ability to each according to their needs. Story 61. Just because you can fit into something does not mean you should. My mom's advice to me at 18 years old about possibly buying and wearing a slinky little black dress. I did not buy or wear anything like that style in my life. My mom, Joan, passed away a year later, and for some reason, I hear that advice more than other valuable words she spoke to me. I miss her every day, every hour, every second, and feel so privileged to have had her as my mom. Story 62. Vengeance is harsh. Do not underestimate a person's willingness to obsess over getting revenge. If you are going to do something mean to someone, make sure you are prepared for retaliation. Story 63. Hey buddy, I am a friend of your mother. She is busy, so she asked me to pick you up from the playground. Typical, right? I got you a milkshake for the ride. Are you ready to go? Story 64. Have some empathy for the rich. My mother recently married a very wealthy Republican. Story 65. It is okay to grieve the life you did not get to have, my therapist said at the time. Story 66. My mother once told me, you'll never be more than some man's insult. Totally unprovoked. That stuck. Story 67. Half my foot is toe, said my best friend after I commented on how stubby my toes are. Grass is always greener, I guess. Story 68. If I could take you back to the adoption agency and trade you for a normal child, I would. Story 69. Why buy the cow when you'll get the milk for free? My mom said upon meeting a girl I was in love with. Years later, I was still single, and she said, I can't believe my son is a womanizer. There really wasn't a way to make her happy. Story 70. Everything in moderation, even moderation. Every day I'm working, but my life is like the weekend. Story 71. I asked the large animal surgery resident at my veterinary school why she decided to pursue a Doctor of Philosophy degree along with her residency. She said, so if a horse cripples me, I can still have an academic career. I went into small animal practice. Story 72. You can lead a horse to water, but you will never make a duck out of him. Something about the way that silly, intentionally misspelled phrase makes me reevaluate my expectations of people and their roles in my life is so valuable. Story 73. Fire in a bowl of vanilla pudding puts a smile on the love of sharks and unwise men. My art teacher in middle school signed my yearbook with that nonsensical statement, but it has stuck with me all that time. Story 74. My father told me, I wish you would have died. The funny thing is, to me, he died right in front of my face the moment he said that. I walked away from him and I will never look back. Story 75. You are just a little person who will never have any friends. I was 12. Thanks, Mom. Story 76. At least you can become pregnant after almost dying from a hemorrhage related to pregnancy. Story 77. Be who you are and say what you mean because those who matter do not mind and those who mind do not matter. Story 78. You have access to fresh water and you defecate in it? In a meme of a white woman holding a black child in Africa, it made me much more aware of how wasteful we are with our resources. Story 79. The business of business is business. I read it before going to elementary school, and I still remember this quote. Story 80. If people knew what you were really like, nobody would like you. My dad to me when I was 10 or 11. Story 81. You are ugly because you are bad inside. My mother said this to me when I was 13 years old. I am 62 and still hear it. Story 82. My grandfather told me that a dog will defecate on the floor as long as you let it, when talking about how people will keep walking all over you if you do not do anything about it. This advice I took to heart 50 years ago, though he probably forgot he told me the next day. Story 83. We don't get men with your history here. They are either deceased or incarcerated. This was said to me by a social worker when I sought help after my partner's suicide. I was in a bad place, hurting from immense grief. I shared my 25-year history with her, and this is what she said. It really affected me because I thought there was something seriously wrong with me due to all the negative experiences I had endured up to that point. Story 84. You're going to be one of those women who always needs a man to take care of her. That was rich coming from my mother. Story 85. You should wear bigger jumpers to cover your fat butt. Cue paranoia about my fat butt, body dysmorphia, and hatred of clothing in general. He does not remember. He does not care. How do I know? Well, I married his brother, so Christmases can be fun. But my husband loves my butt. Story 86. There were 2 incidents within months of each other during my freshman year of college, involving different girls. I was 18 years old and very shy. One girl told me, "You'll be the first of us to be married because it's the least expected." She did not realize how hurtful that was. The second incident was when I overheard my roommate telling another roommate, after an amazing date I had been on, he only went out with her because he felt sorry for her. Those were formative times. Story 87. No one is going to want to be with her when she is 300 pounds, said my mother in front of me to my stepfather when I was 14 years old. Both my brothers were severely overweight, and funny enough, that was never an issue. She never worried if they were attractive or not. We are all no contact with her, and I never let another person touch me until I was 25 years old. I was still completely crushed afterward because I hated my body so much. I still do, and I have developed a serious eating disorder that I continue to struggle with now at 40. I am only allowed to eat once a day. That meal can basically only be chicken, vegetables, and a potato, and I am only allowed to eat once all chores are completed. The chores are arbitrary, so I keep moving the goalposts on myself and can go a few days restricting my intake like that, basically not eating. I feel I need to do something morally acceptable to earn the permission to eat. I know it is in my own head, and yes, I have gone to therapy, but it is still really hard to get through every day, and I fail more often than I succeed. All from an offhand comment she made 26 years ago that was just another Tuesday to her but changed the trajectory of my entire existence. Story 88. Freakazoid. Always ask for a piece of the gross, not the net. The net is a fantasy. Story 89. Show off if you have something to show off. I do not really like it and I keep thinking about it. It was a rich, boastful child I met who said it. Story 90. My husband, referring to our adult son and me, said, "You are both very special people," meant in a good way. Story 91. When I was trying to learn the way from my school to the bus stop as a young child, I was given the advice, just follow everyone else. That was the worst advice I was ever given in hindsight, and I vowed to teach my children to lead the way instead of following others. Story 92. It would not hurt if you stopped struggling. I hate that I cannot forget that. Story 93. Oh my God, they butchered you. After surgery for cancer, sliced across my neck, and after a fully down and depressed day, I know she would have no idea the impact that sentence had on me. Story 94. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Story 95. Why are you getting so mad? We are just making fun of you. I have a complicated last name, and people made fun of it all my life. I used to get really mad as a kid and threaten and sometimes try to beat people up. When we moved to another city and I came to the new school in 6th grade, they started to make fun of my name, and I exploded again. This guy just did not understand why I got so mad because that was just how they talked with each other. I then realized that making fun of my name did not mean they did not like me or thought badly of me. This changed my whole attitude. Story 96. I did not pry. You offered the information, and if you did not want to tell me, a grizzly bear with an engineering degree and a crowbar could not have gotten it out of you. Story 97. I was 21 years old, working at my first major job. My manager wanted to listen to me take a few customer calls to make sure I was doing them correctly. I was very nervous. The customer asked me something I did not have an answer to, so I asked if I could put him on hold. However, I did not say that. I said, "Can I hold you?" Story 98. A girl I was in middle school with told me, "No girl will ever love you. You are going to die alone." For years, it haunted me. I was a nerdy kid who was bigger than everyone else. I was a non-Catholic in Catholic school. In short, I was always different. I didn't know that I just hadn't found my people yet. Every rejected date, every breakup, I heard her voice again. I am now happily married to a nerdy goth girl, and life is great. I still remember her words, but now it's just a mean kid, not a prophecy. Story 99. I have two, both from my father. About 6 years old, really excited about something and sharing with him, he interrupts with, "Do you ever shut up?" Then high school, bringing home my first C on a progress report, not a report card. He said, "You need to start practicing. Would you like fries with that? Or paper or plastic, sir? Because that's the peak of what you're going to achieve." I am no contact and doing much better. Story 100. She gets you, son, and you are a hard man to get. My dad telling me about how much he liked my then girlfriend, now wife, about 15 years ago. I was already fully committed to her by then. The reason it stuck with me is 1, I was really touched to hear how much he liked her, and 2, he had never described me as difficult or anything like that until then, and it surprised me. I asked him to elaborate, and he described in the most gentle, loving way possible the cons of living with me. It was kind of an epiphany for me, really. I am not sure he would even remember it. Story 101. You should be proud that I slept with my girlfriend at the time. Story 102. Ooh, you've got hairy arms, my godmother said to a very self-conscious 13-year-old me. I have shaved them ever since. Story 103. Do not take financial advice from people who are struggling financially. Avoid borrowing money from individuals with limited financial resources. Story 104. From my mother when I told her I was dating a woman. Maybe it is not the men you were dating that were the problem, it is probably you. I mean, I am a problem, but my now wife loves me anyway. She is a better spouse than I deserve. So booyah, Mom. Story 105. You are ruining your life, son. Thanks, Dad. At the time, I was an honor roll student who never partied, smoked, used drugs, or sneaked out of the house. Story 106. While you are marching, you are not fighting. The person who said this is no longer alive, but I will always remember it. As unpleasant as a task may be, like marching, appreciate it while you can and do not complain, because the alternative is usually worse. Fighting. Story 107. I was really struggling for money at one point. It got so bad that I was digging through garbage to find aluminum cans to turn in for coins. When I told my father, he laughed and said I was stealing from homeless people. I never forgot that. Story 108. It is okay if you never have a family. Your sister gave us grandchildren. Story 109. It does not matter if you agreed to 10 cents per hour. You show up and do what you agreed to do. My dad, back in the 1970s, said I am never less than 10 minutes early for anything and only call in or cancel if there is a real emergency. I have, however, learned to say no at the start. Story 110. I hope your children realize you are not a good role model before it is too late. It was not said to me, but I was a part of it. It was such an intense experience, and I find myself thinking about it when I see parents behaving wildly in public around their children. Story 111. In middle school, I was one of those horrible kids who thought that pointing out errors or plot holes made me look smart. A girl named Mari told me, instead of trying to think of all the ways something won't work, why don't you try to think of ways it could? That gradually changed over time to, instead of thinking of all the reasons why someone shouldn't believe something, try to think of why they do. Using imagination and critical thinking in a cooperative way instead of competitively made me a lot more empathetic and understanding as a person. Story 112. Calories cannot enter your body without your consent. This really helped me turn the corner on my weight loss. Story 113. Daughter, I still don't know what I want to do with my life, but as long as I have your mother with me, it will all be okay. Something my dad said to me 30 years ago after I asked him how he knew what he wanted to be or do with his life. He and Mom are still going strong and will hit 60 years together this fall. Story 114. Everything is just more fun when you are not around. Ex-boyfriend. Story 115. My mom, 1977, when I was about 15, regarding a simple winter scarf I had bought that she found in my closet. This is yours? So pretty and feminine. I thought it was your sister's. I am not sure why it cut so deep, but it did. I never said anything. I just carry the wound around, buried deep, and every once in a while it pops up in the forefront of my mind. Story 116. Well, that would not work even if we did know what we were talking about. Story 117. 4-year-old girl I was babysitting. Don't say but. Say booty. Story 118. You're useless. From my mother on multiple occasions. It's the one phrase that still goes to the bone. Story 119. It's all in your head, said my best friend when I was explaining how ignored I felt after he stopped talking to me. Story 120. We are two individuals with one soul. Married days later. Yes, love at first sight can actually be real. Story 121. It pays to be a regular man. I was 18, came running home with cheeks clenched and a look of fear in my eyes. I rushed through the door, did not even greet my dad, and almost blew through the bathroom door. When I was done with my personal Vietnam, I opened the door, and that was the first thing my dad said to me. Story 122. You are the worst parts of me, said by my mother who denies ever saying it. Story 123. You need to be careful because you are exactly the type of person who would end up in an abusive relationship. My mom's best friend trying to give me dating advice. Story 124. Stop making excuses, said my science teacher in front of my mother as I explained that I was late for class because she had dropped me off late. My mother supported me, but 20 years later, I still apologize and feel horrible when I have to explain something. I repeatedly let others know that I take responsibility and that it is not an excuse. I just want them to understand what happened to delay my arrival. On the bright side, I try to keep in mind that if I need an excuse, I need to change my approach to the problems instead. Story 125. When I was in 7th grade, I was at the beach on a school field trip. I had my shirt off and a backpack on when one of the girls in my class pointed at me with her friends and said, "Hey, nice body." They all burst out laughing. I wasn't the most in-shape kid, to say the least. That triggered a 30-year struggle with body dysmorphia, where I still have that less-than-fit body and anxiety about exercise, especially being seen trying. Her name was very distinctive too, so I've never forgotten it. I never took my shirt off at the beach again. Story 126. No feeling is final. In October, it will be nearly 1 year since he took his own life. I will never forget that line from a friend whom I loved dearly, despite his many flaws. Story 127. There is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self. Ernest Hemingway. He probably forgot this because he wrote a lot, drank a lot, and is dead now. This line sticks with me, and I am not much for memorizing anything. Story 128. A pastor of mine once said to me, "It won't always be this way. I was going through 5 to 8 years of the roughest part of my life. He was right. The best pastor I have ever had, Brother Booker. Story 129. Your parents are not gods. You will realize it when you are older. I am 40 now. It turns out both my parents are premium fools. Story 130. Why can't you be more like your friends? Do not trust anyone, not even me. Both my dad and he proved the last one spectacularly. Story 131. I am so completely in love with you. Current partner of 13 years, 2 weeks after first date. Story 132. Every time you try to quit smoking, you get better at it. I just remember my dad, who hadn't smoked for 15 years before I was born, going on once or twice about how those Nicorette nicotine patches did not work. Some study he had read said that people who tried to quit with them and relapsed never succeeded in quitting. Like many things he used to say, it probably was not a well-researched opinion. But it stuck with me when he told me as a kid. I do not smoke that much, but I do smoke, and I know I need to quit. Hearing the quote above, it felt immediately self-evident. I know what it is like to have a cigarette and to not have a cigarette. I know it is a muscle, a willpower that can be exercised. I know that when the time comes to conquer that habit, and that time is fast approaching, I may stumble, but I will eventually have the strength to do so. Story 133. My dad said to me during one of the fights he started, "Have you ever wondered why nobody likes you?" Story 134. From Mother. You need to go on a show like The Bachelor. It is the only way to find someone who would want you. But first, you need the swan. Each episode of the series followed 2 self-proclaimed ugly ducklings, who, over a 3-month period, experienced an extreme makeover from a team that included a personal trainer, therapist, dentist, and cosmetic surgeons. Whichever woman was deemed more attractive at the end of the 3 months would move forward to compete in a beauty pageant held at the end of the season. Story 135. The ground does not care who digs it, said my mother to me. I emigrated from my home country about 7 years ago and have missed many births, weddings, and funerals. It has always stayed with me. The ground does not care who digs it. Story 136. Everything interesting has already happened. This was said before November 2016. Story 137. I had just told my mother about adopting a senior dog, and she said, "So she will not be with your family for very long." At the time, she was both intoxicated and in the early stages of dementia, so we had the same conversation again in the morning. However, I remembered the whole thing. Story 138. When I first met you, I thought you were a shell of a person with no personality. Story 139. Things taste better when you steal them. I hope she found my heart delectable. Story 140. One day you are going to wake up and realize you never really lived, said by the person who died of an overdose a year later. Story 141. Usually I'd use an asterisk. Not poignant or anything. I heard it in a store while I was having a panic attack, and it just became a phrase my brain repeats when I am mentally unwell. It's been around 10 years now. I highly doubt whoever said it remembers. Story 142. You are going to make a terrible secretary, my high school mandatory typing class teacher. Story 143. This is why you do not have any friends. After I got upset from a video of a puppy being thrown off a cliff. I was in middle school and she was about to graduate high school. One of many reasons I am not communicating with my sister. Story 144. If we got back together, I could buy a Porsche, my now ex, during our separation. Thankfully, I got over my broken heart quickly and signed the divorce papers. Story 145. All fiction falls into one of 3 categories. Man against man, man against nature, man against the supernatural. I dislike this classification because it is so limited, but it seems all plots can eventually fit into one or more of these categories. This was said by an English teacher, possibly in 7th or 8th grade, decades ago, but it remains with me. Story 146. Here, finish the job. Kill yourself, she said as she handed me the knife I had used to cut myself. She was my mother. Story 147. I don't care what you do as long as there is money in the bank. My ex-wife divorced me when I did what I had to do to keep money in the bank. Story 148. I hate you. From my then 12-year-old. I know he did not mean it and we are very close. He is 20 now, but it still stings. Story 149. Why do you always dress like that? A male classmate in the second year of middle school said this when I wore a brand new jeans and vest set that had nothing even remotely sexual about it. We were 12 years old. Story 150. You make the people around you better. Of any compliment I have ever received, this is the one I most want to live up to. Story 151. You are only responsible for your own emotional landscape, not anyone else's. Story 152. Do not let the perfect get in the way of the good. Do not let the important get in the way of the vital. Story 153. Long-time and very serious girlfriend said, I slept with the most popular guy on the college campus. Crushed me and 40 years later still hurts. Story 154. A colleague in a previous job, upon hearing that the reason I was so upset at work one day was because my grandmother was dying, said, well, I am really sorry about that, but you are at work now. You need to just get over it until home time. I genuinely wish that that conversation had never happened and that I had confronted her for her insensitivity. That was 9 years ago, and I have never forgotten it, especially since my grandmother died that night 5 hours away, and I never got to say goodbye to her. I am a fairly nice person on the whole, but I hope that colleague faces consequences for her insensitivity. Story 155. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. My mom said this when I was in 5th grade. My sibling had threatened me and made me lie to my mom about something. When I told the truth, my sibling did not get in trouble at all, and I understood that. Story 156. My dad once told me he wished he never had children. That stung. He does not remember saying it. These were late-night talks on Christmas after everyone else went to bed. I cherish those talks, but Dad, keep that to yourself. Story 157. You will never succeed at anything in your life. Said to me by my trumpet professor when I was 19, almost half my life ago. Forget you, Dorival. Story 158. You get your belongings home, gather your things, and leave immediately. My father in 1989. Story 159. You are ugly as sin, my mother said. She now insists it was a joke and that I was so unaware as a child for not realizing it was a joke. Story 160. You don't see yourself the way everyone else sees you, do you? I have been depressed ever since. Story 161. You're the biggest mistake I ever made. At least your sister was planned. Story 162. I was talking about some friends from high school that I didn't see anymore. I was told that I was the one who changed. They did not. Simple. True. Story 163. Sometimes I wish you were never born. My mother said this to me when I was a child, between 6 and 10 years old. She is kinder now, but she does not remember saying that and has likely forgotten much of the physical and mental abuse she inflicted on me. She has never apologized. Story 164. Your father hates you. This was said to me by my mother many times during my childhood. I was in my late 20s when I learned that my father does love me. My dad is in his 90s now, and every time I talk to him, he ends the call with, I love you, but I still hear the echoes of my mother's words. Story 165. Stay out of my wife's life. The speaker was my father. His wife was my mother. Story 166. An engineer told me as a child that if I can think of something, then somebody has already thought of it. Story 167. Well, you are not ugly, are you? My now ex-partner, when I asked if he even thought I was pretty after years of being together and never receiving a compliment. Story 168. My mother wanted a pretty princess type of daughter. To her despair, I turned out to be a tomboy. She has said many awful things, but for some reason this one stuck the hardest. I had gone hunting with my stepfather when I was 8 years old, and I came back all muddy but happy. She saw me laughing in the front yard, and it bothered her. So she yelled, "Why do you have to be the worst thing I ever did with my life?" She then laughed when I started to tear up. Story 169. Don't ever have children. It is not worth it. My mother said this to me, Story 170. I cannot wait for all the years of therapy I am going to cause you, my abusive mother. Story 171. If I had known your father would leave me anyway, I never would have had you. I wish you had been born a girl. Not only does she not remember saying these things, she denies them or blames her medication, depending on her mood. Story 172. Something like, death will have your eternity. Don't waste your short living time agonizing over it. I used to think about it every day and have panic attacks. This helped me so much. Story 173. Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie, but The Empire Strikes Back is a better movie. My son said this very thoughtfully one night, out of nowhere, as I was tucking him in for bed when he was in kindergarten or first grade. Story 174. German teacher. If you are going to study, focus on the most commonly used words, as those will likely come up many times. Do not spend too much time on words you will never use, such as Meerschweinchen, guinea pig. I basically remember nothing else from 2 years of German lessons. Story 175. Just do what you have to do to get to the weekend. My son said this to his sister after a bad first day at school. Such a great life motto. Just change the word weekend to vacation. Story 176. A therapist once shared a variation of a classic saying, stop comparing your pain to others. You might be drowning in 10 feet of water, and they might be drowning in 20 feet. But you are both still drowning, and you both need help. This changed my life. Story 177. All of these are very serious. Mine is my boyfriend saying, it's not wet, it's just sticky. Story 178. After an attempt to end my life, my mother found me and said, if you were going to do it, you could have at least done it right. To this day, that is the worst thing anyone has ever said to me, and I doubt she even remembers it. Story 179. My mother said, why are you defending her? When my brother stood in front of me to keep her from hitting me. Estimated time of arrival. I was 13 years old. Story 180. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. Or, on the other hand, speak your mind but act swiftly. Story 181. You do not have to take part in every argument you are invited to. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.